Welcome, everybody, to another QB Power Hour. Today's topic is getting paid with QuickBooks Payments. And Dan and I are going to be talking about both QuickBooks Online and desktop as well. My name is Michelle Long. I am a CPA and the owner of Long for Success, the author of 5 different books. Check them out on Amazon if you want. The QuickBooks Online practice set was updated earlier this year if you need more practice learning about QuickBooks. There's the link for the Facebook group and the LinkedIn group. We'd love to have you join us out there as well, particularly that Facebook group. It's very active, so we'd love to have you join us out there. Dan, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, good morning or afternoon if you're on the East Coast. My name is Dan Delong, the owner of Danwith. I used to work at Intuit for about 18 years, so proficient in all Intuit ecosystem products, whether it be desktop, online, point of sale, payroll, and payments, which is what we're talking about today. And I just finished editing the QBO for Dummies 5th edition, which should be out in stores soon. So back to you, Michelle.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. Great to have you. Yeah, Dan, his knowledge is just excellent. He knows a lot of the deep details. I always say I need somebody smarter than myself, and that's Dan. So glad to have you with us, Dan. All right, so just a reminder on the QB Power Hour webinars, it is a webinar series every other Thursday. Next Thursday is going to be Automate. They're going to be joining us. We're going to be talking about getting batch transactions entered into QuickBooks. So you don't want to miss that because Automate is amazing, particularly when you have clients that might be using a third-party system that's not integrating with QuickBooks, or somehow they've got sales coming from another system or different transactions that you need to get into QuickBooks. Automate is amazing, so make sure you put that one on your calendar and join us for that. But as you know, with our QuickBooks topics, we talk about our topics in QB Power Hour. We talk about various topics, whether it's QuickBooks related, like we're doing today, or sometimes we talk about marketing, value pricing, third-party apps, and more. But it's always going to be topics that are going to help you as an accounting professional succeed in your business. There's the links where you can find the PDF of the slides for all the QB Power Hours throughout the year, as well as the recording. So make sure you bookmark those links. And also you can get today's slides from the handouts on the GoToWebinar toolbar. So you can download them there during the webinar, or if it's after the fact and you're listening to this on YouTube or something, go ahead and download them from that tiny.cc URL. You can get the handouts there. As a reminder about upcoming events, we've already mentioned the QB Power Hour upcoming, but I would like to personally invite you to join us for the QuickBooks VCon and Roadshow and some of these events coming up from Intuit. If you bookmark and go to qbtrainingevents.com, there you'll find lots of great events for you, and we've got a VCon, a virtual conference coming up next week where you can attend from your own home, your own office, your own, wherever you happen to be logged in. You can attend that virtual conference, and they're going to cover certification training as well as other topics, so you'll want to check that out. And then also, we'd love to have you join us at QuickBooks Connect. That's coming up the first part of November in San Jose, California. It is an amazing conference. It's really jammed packed with great events over a 3-day period or a 2-day period, kind of depending on what you want to go. And so we'd love to have you go. Sign up for QuickBooks Connect. Dan and I will both be there, as well as a lot of your peers and a lot of small business owners. So we'd love to have you see you there and join us for that if you can join us. All right. Now here, when you go to qbtrainingevents.com, this is what you'll see, and you'll notice there are webinars on the bottom left. You'll see webinars. Every single month Intuit has these free webinars, free CPE for you that you can join the in-person training. I really want to encourage you to go check that out because we're going to be starting the fall tour pretty soon. I believe we're starting in September. I think I'm going the end of September all the way through the middle of December. And I and other trainers will be joining you in cities throughout the U.S. We're going to talk about an intro to QuickBooks. We're going to talk about the core certification if you need to get certified. We will be doing advanced certification. We will be doing recertification training if you need to recertify, as well as, and all of those are free. But then we have some special events coming up as well. These are paid, but as pro advisors, you can get them at a significant discount, so you might want to check into them. The Grow Your Practice Workshop. We're going to spend time getting into the details on marketing and pricing and growing your practice with additional services like app consulting and app integrations and things like that. So it's It's a fabulous one. Then we also have a 2-day master class where we're really getting into the details on topics like this, and you're really getting into some detail on advanced topics with QuickBooks as well, and technical details like importing transactions and using third-party tools. And I just can't say enough. Go check them out because they're great. So we would love to see you. I know I'm going up to the East Coast around the New Jersey or Long Island area. I'll be up in the East Coast. I'll be in California, near Irvine and Pasadena. I'll be in, I believe, Miami. Just all over the country, and we have trainers going everywhere. I think I'm also going up to Portland, so I think I'm covering kind of everywhere. But we have other trainers going to other cities too, so go check those out, because Intuit just does an amazing job putting on these events for you, so I can't encourage you enough to go check that out. So what we're going through today, we're going to talk about QuickBooks Payments. I'm going to let Dan go first because he's got great slides and he knows this stuff way better than I do. So we're going to let Dan go over the details of desktop and Go Payment, and then I will have slides in here to show you how it looks in QBO, QuickBooks Online, and we'll point out what some of those differences are, because there's a lot of similarities between the two. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and launch our first poll question to kind of see where you guys are at. And remember, unfortunately, we don't have CPE for you all anymore, but we still like to share with you and get some information for you on these poll questions as to what you're using and what your clients are doing and things like that. So while you answer that poll question, I'm going to try not to mess anything up and change the presenter over to you, Dan.
All right.
So let's see if you can click to accept that. And thank you guys for answering that poll question. Here's a good one that we have coming in, and Dan and I don't know if we'll talk about this, but I'll go ahead and answer it, and Dan, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Can QuickBooks Payments receive payments from other countries? So if you have QuickBooks Payments in the U.S., no, I don't think it can unless that's updated in the past few years. Dan, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so if you're talking about receiving like a U.S. company receiving a payment in another country, yeah, no, it's only going to be acceptable. Now there are third parties that will allow you to accept international payments, and that you may or may not be able to link your QuickBooks payment account to that. But there are other options out there. If you're in Canada and using the Canadian version of QuickBooks, yes, you can receive payments in Canada, but you can't accept them in the U.S. So there's that whole multi-currency and the currency exchange that just really throws things for a loop.
Yeah, and what I've had to do, because I have had clients from Canada or from the UK, I've also had a client from South Africa, and I've used PayPal for those clients in that situation. When I have to have an international payment, I've used PayPal in those situations. So that might help you out some. Very good. Thank you, Dan. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close this poll, and I'll share the results real quick. So 60% of you say yes, that you use QuickBooks Payments. So hopefully we will help you learn some new stuff throughout the day today. 9% say no, I don't want to pay the fees. And I will share with you, and Dan will share with you, a little trick that I do. I turn off the credit card part so they have to pay with their online bank account to save on the fees, because I'm a cheapskate. So I will share that trick with you. 3% didn't know about it. 21% said not yet, but I'd like to. So great. Hopefully we're going to help you today so you can start doing that. So Dan, we should be able to see your screen now. Let me just double check that and go ahead and carry on, because I can't see your screen.
Okay, so I'm showing my screen too, and it's are you able to see it? Is it?
Yes.
Okay,
you're
fantastic.
On the title slide.
Okay, so the QuickBooks Payments and Desktop and Go Payment.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right, so just a little bit about the history of payments in QuickBooks. I was one of the first three agents to support payments in QuickBooks when I worked at Intuit. And this was back in the day when the partnership was with Chase and Wells Fargo. So this is going way back. And that was back in like 2002 or so. So you kind of think of how payments has kind of evolved over that time period. Mobile payments was an option. Accepting, the Intuit Payment Network, came out around 2015. What Intuit put through an initiative to kind of consolidate all of those payment options, whether it be, electronic checks or bank transfers, those types of things, all under one payment account, and be able to do all that in one payment account, regardless of whether you're using QuickBooks or online or desktop. But there are some distinct features that you can do in desktop that you can't do in online, and vice versa. So that's what we wanted to kind of illustrate here during this webinar, is kind of point out some of those functionality differences. But with one payment account, you're going to be able to do mobile payments, accept them online through e-invoicing, and process them directly within your QuickBooks. So one thing I wanted to note about is the security in desktop. This was a pain, to put it lightly, when it was rolled out. But the way I had to explain it to folks, it was for your own good, right? Because inside of your QuickBooks desktop, you're going to be storing credit card numbers, bank information, a lot of personally identifiable information. And if you have one login and that password doesn't change over time, that's a security risk. If your company file gets to be got hijacked or compromised, that's the word I was looking for. So they instituted a requirement to change the password every 90 days, and it has to be a strong password. And this allows you to stay in PCI compliance, and that PCI stands for Payment Card Industry. But what it does when you do that every 90 days is it re-encrypts inside of QuickBooks Desktop. The security, or the personally identifiable information, is encrypted. So when you reset your admin password, it goes through and re-encrypts that. So if somebody got a hands on your file that you didn't intend to, that information will be re-encrypted over time, every 90 days. So it is a pain, and especially with with accountants and bookkeepers needing to kind of keep up on their admin password, those things need to be changed. And it's not just payments, it's any personally identifiable information. So if you have payroll, you've got everybody's social security number in there. If even just your EIN is personally identifiable information. So not just with payments, but just in general, that security option is there. So charging credit cards inside of QuickBooks can be done either on a payment transaction or on a sales receipt itself. The way you would just do that is select the payment method, and then once your account is enabled, then it's going to give you this option to either key enter the transaction, or if you have a swipe purchase swiper, you can swipe the card directly from there. You would obviously want to swipe it if you have the swiper and the card is present, because that's going to save you on the fees, because that's less of a risk. When the card is present, the fees are going to be lower for that, other than typing it in. Charging ACH payments, very similar. You just choose the option of e-check, and then you'll get the option to enter in their banking information. Because it's going directly through the bank, there's typically less cause of chargebacks, so the fees are going to be lower than credit cards by using this option. And in desktop, I believe it's just a flat $1. We'll talk about the QuickBooks Online when Michelle gets to that. Now, e-invoicing allows you to send an invoice out of QuickBooks that's payment enabled. So this is kind of somewhere.
Dan,
yeah.
I'm sorry. Before you go on into the e-invoicing and get into that whole how it works, a couple of quick questions for you. You were talking about change your password and how it requires you to do that. And I had a couple of people that say that, so Kathy says that she uses ACH like I do, and she hasn't had to change the password on QB Desktop. And then also Lynn says, I've never been reminded in 2019 for Account Desktop to change a password. Do you know anything about that?
That's peculiar, because I know, when the initiative was back in 2015 for the security issue, then any personally identifiable information would trigger this option. I
You know,
remember talking to people and who didn't want to have this option at all, and
right.
you would have to go through and remove every bit of personally identifiable information, so social security numbers or tax IDs from vendors, and the employees, and just take out their EIN out of the company file. Just that one thing would typically cause that. So if it's not asking you to do that, I would be curious as to why, for sure, unless it's just one
Well, and I
particular
was
company file or
Yeah,
something
and
like
I was just sitting here wondering, I wonder if there's something now with the new MFA, the multi-factor authorization,
that.
if that has changed. Or Kathy had a good thing here, and I was wondering this as well. On ACH, the customer is entering that data, not
Mhm.
us. So we're not storing that in our QuickBooks desktop file.
Right.
So maybe that's why on the ACH side. So
Yeah.
I wasn't sure, but those were some good questions, so I thought I would ask you before you moved on.
Correct. Yeah. And then this ties nicely into the e-invoicing, because if you're payment enabling an invoice, none of that information is stored within your QuickBooks company file. So you're sending that email out that gives them a pay now button on the email itself, and then the customer is handling all their payment information. So that's why it's one of those things that's kind of like a mid risk rate, because you don't have any information regarding the payment itself, and the customer can then choose, what bank information they're going to be entering in there. So that information doesn't flow back into QuickBooks in its entirety. So that information is not stored on the customer. But if you're entering the bank information on the payment screen, or the credit card on the payment screen, and charging it from within QuickBooks itself, then that information is going to be stored on the customer, and then that's going to trigger that whole process of needing to change the password. Hopefully that answers that question. There's a lot of nuances when it comes to that. So with regards to e-invoicing, QuickBooks is going to email the invoice, and the customer is going to pay online on their end. You're going to have a lower fee than the key entered, so there's less of a risk because the card is more present, but it's more in control of the customer. And then you'll have the option of the choice of payment method. So you can set up these global preferences of credit card versus bank transfer. And if you're like Michelle, you're just going to choose bank transfer as that option, but that's a global preference. And then you can go in to each individual customer and specify that as well. So if you tried with the credit card, and they keep forgetting that you're needing to, that they actually paid you with a credit card, and they dispute, that's the word I was looking for, dispute the charge, then you can say, well, just never do that with credit cards, just always do that with bank transfers on a per customer level. And then when you have an invoice and you're going to send it to someone, it's going to send it through your webmail, whether your Gmail or other webmail service that you've set up within QuickBooks Desktop, or your Outlook. So if you have Outlook installed on your computer, you can send it that way. And then you'll be able to see on the invoice that the customer can pay online, and what method, and you can change it on a per transactional basis if you want to switch to ACH for that particular transaction, or just give them the choice. Now with recurring credit card charges, so when you're a business that is like a gym or something where you have the same amount each time per person, you can set up recurring charges, and you can do this in desktop too, or online too, but it's set up a little bit differently. But this is only handled in the merchant center, and it can only be done per credit card. So that's one big difference between desktop and online, is that you can set up recurring payments for bank transfers in online. And in the merchant center is where you would handle the recurring credit card charges. The invoice and payment is created. The nice part is that your customers and your items are going to be synchronized with the merchant center, so you can create the actual sale with the recurring payment, and specify what day that charge is going to happen. And so then all those things then get downloaded automatically once the transaction goes through. Now, refunds. This was always a point of confusion when it came to issuing refunds. So when it comes to issuing a refund, you want to take a step back and understand what actually is being refunded. Did they overpay? Did they pay the wrong card and then they want to use a different card? Or are they actually returning something? So if they said, well, cancel the order and give me back my money, that would be a case for the refund with a return. And you would start the situation or this process with a credit memo because you're returning goods and services. And then on the credit memo itself, you'll have the option then to refund that via their credit card. Now, when would you do a void versus a refund? A void is just canceling the credit card charge, but you can only void it within the day. So if it happens in that same day, then you're going to need, then you can void the transaction. So like it never took place. If it happens in that the next day or after 3 p.m. Pacific time, I think is the cutoff time, or for when the service actually batches out the charges. Once it's gone past that point, you'll have to do a refund in that case and actually give the money back to them, and that you would just be processing the credit card refund when you're saving the refund. So in a situation where you're just giving money back to them without and giving them a credit, then it gets a little trickier because you're not actually giving them, canceling goods and services. So it does get a little tricky, and it, in those types of things, it's on more on a case-by-case basis. But you may want to do the refund inside of the merchant center and then, handle the accounting side of things through just creating a check to accounts receivable to give them a credit so that they can use it later, or vice versa. One thing you can do in desktop that you can't do in online is do an authorization. So something like a car rental or a hotel where they authorize, put a hold on your funds. You can do that inside of QuickBooks Desktop. Under the credit card processing activities, there's going to be an authorize/capture, and then it just puts a hold on those funds, and then anywhere from 1 to 10 days later, you can then capture that as a payment later. So they've stayed at your Airbnb or what have you, and then you want to collect on that, then you can capture it after the dust settles. But that ensures that the funds are there. It's kind of like making a reservation at a restaurant. They're going to hold the table for you, and then the capture would you actually be going to sit at the table. Now, with all payments accounts, you're going to have the ability to do mobile payments as well. But that's going to be using the Go Payment app. So it's you can download the app through the App Store or Google Play. It's going to allow you to accept mobile payments. One thing to note is that it's payments only, meaning that the Go payment doesn't synchronize with your QuickBooks and your customers. It does your customers, but it doesn't do any of your items, unless you're using point of sale, but that's another story. So you can't necessarily sell something out of Go Payment and then have that information flow back into your QuickBooks. But it will allow you to accept payments mobilely, and then those payments can be then downloaded to apply to an invoice that's already in your QuickBooks. And to do that, you would just click on get online payments. There's multiple ways of getting them, and it will allow you to download those payments. Again, it's no items and just payments only.
And that's another area where actually QuickBooks Online is great, because when they're using the mobile app, they have access to QuickBooks and they can receive that payment directly on that mobile app. And they can actually go out, like let's say if I have a plumber come out, they can actually enter that sales receipt on the QBO mobile app, swipe the credit card to take the payment all right there. So that is a little difference between Go Payment for desktop and the QBO mobile app. So I didn't have a slide on that, so I wanted to put that out there.
Right, and that's a big thing about a lot of people don't necessarily know that you can accept credit cards in QBO directly, and that's what's great about doing that, because again, the history of the payments accounts is that Go Payment came out, I don't know, in 2008, 2009, something like that, and then there was a big push on that, and then now that's part of the, okay, well, this is how you accept mobile payments. And then later on, QBO was payment card, industry got its PCI compliance inside of QBO. So now you can do either inside of QBO or inside of Go Payment when you're using an online company. But you can, and again, you can do either in that situation. But some people don't want to have their field service agents access to their QuickBooks. So that gives them an option to then make them a Go Payment user, and then they'll be able to accept payments. If they're landscaping, pest control, those types of things, they can accept those payments, and then it'll come right back into their QuickBooks Online.
And Dan, I just want to make a comment here because I've had problems with my refrigerator lately. And my ice machine keeps freezing up and something keeps leaking. Anyway, it's a story I just wanted to share with you. So the guy comes out to fix the refrigerator, and I'm like, okay, how do I pay you? Can I pay you with a credit card? And he's like, yeah, I'll write it down. I'll take it back into the office, and then we'll process it. And I'm like, oh, no, no, no. And I'm like, there's an app for that, so you can receive it on your phone. Yeah, I don't know how to set it up. I can help you with that. You can get clients. A lot of these small business owners, they know they can do it. They just are so busy working their business, they don't have time to figure it out. That's a great opportunity for us to help them accept credit card payments out in the field. So like Dan mentioned, lawn and landscape, plumbers, electricians, pet sitting, the bug spray people. I mean, anybody who's out doing services out in the field and things like that, that's a great opportunity for us to help them learn how to set this up. So I just wanted to share that as an opportunity for growing your business and getting more work.
Right. Sometimes they'll just show up at your door. Now, one of the big things about big differences between desktop and online, where it comes to the payments and the integration, because really when it comes down to it, the integration is where you're going to have a lot of time savings for you and your clients. Where when you're comparing this with other payment processors, whether that be Square or Stripe or anything else. The biggest difference between desktop and online is desktop, you have to initiate the download. Once you send the invoice or receive the payment in online, that everything else is going to happen automatically, or as Brad Smith would say, automagically. But integration is really the best feature of this payment processing. When you go into make merchant service deposits in desktop, this screen is going to come up, and you have the ability to add your online payment. So anything that was done through Go Payment, or if you processed it directly in the merchant center, or if you did a recurring transaction, you can download those transactions to the Add Online Payments. And they're going to come in, they should come in here automatically. And then you would just select which ones you want to pay. All things being equal, if things customers match up, then you would just record the payments, the fees, and make deposits right from that screen. So everything else, with the exception of not having it done automatically, everything else happens automatically in this screen. As far as recording the payments, making recording the fees, and making the deposits. And then you can set up the settings as far as where those things get automatically changed down here at the bottom, where you have the change your deposit settings. All right.
Oh, wait.
You want to
hold
do
on there.
Paul?
So Dan, okay, we have a really good question here. Go back up to the screen you were just on. When will the dismiss selected payments on this merchant deposit screen be working? Mine is grayed out, but I have old transactions that are waiting to be added but have actually already been recorded.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a pretty new feature. That would be probably the best thing to contact Intuit directly about that to see if because I'm sure there's with any new feature, it works from that day forward. Um, and then sometimes, depending on how things happened up until that point, it may or may not be accurate, as what you would expect it to. So that's just one thing to kind of keep in mind with any new feature that rolls out with Intuit. Typically, from that point forward, it works like a charm. But from that day prior, there's typically something that just didn't either get thought about or just didn't doesn't fit the exact bill of what it is the feature was designed to do. So if it's a historical transaction that's showing back in the way back in the past, that might be a product investigation on Intuit's part to get them out of there, or they may just always be there. It's one of those nuances about those new features.
Okay, Dan, another one for you, another hard one. I've had many
Mm.
problems with the merchant services not allowing you to make deposits. I've had to reinstall QB Desktop 2018 numerous times to get rid of the old payments. Any comments?
Yeah, I know that there was an issue where it would say it can't match to the payment even though they were in there, and unfortunately, repairing or reinstalling QuickBooks was the only way to get that working. It is the best option, unfortunately, is keep letting Intuit know about that so that they can find out how many people this is impacting and make a case for making a change for whatever that happens to be. But it doesn't happen for everybody, and it doesn't not work for everybody. So there's more to the case, and then they got to get to the root cause in order to make that work. And that's the plus and minus of this type of thing is that the fact that it's integrated allows you to send the information to Intuit to be able to make those changes happen. And then on the flip side, if you're using a different payment method like PayPal or Square and using some app to do that, then you may have then you've got a strict disconnect. So now you got to wait for one thing to work with another, and it may or may not be the exception or the expected way that you wanted to do that.
Very good. Okay, thank you, Dan. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I took control back while you were talking, Dan. Thank you.
Okay, I saw that.
And I will just say something that I don't miss unexpected situations with desktop. I don't miss those at all. It seems
Yeah.
like there's not a lot of issues like that with QuickBooks Online. So I like that. But anyway,
Yeah.
all right, speaking of
We would
QuickBooks
call them
Online,
we would call them undocumented program features.
i.e. bugs. All right, let me do another poll question real quickly. So are you guys using a merchant service account for your or what are your clients using for merchant services, especially if they're not using QuickBooks? What other merchant services are they using out there? And then Dan, while they're answering this, I wanted to just clarify something with you. People that are using QBO, QuickBooks Online, for their accounting, they're not using QuickBooks Desktop, they should use the QBO mobile app to accept those payments in the field, not Go Payment. Is that correct?
Well, you have a choice, and that's what I was trying to get across earlier. So you can use either or.
Okay. I always
if you
recommend the mobile app.
right, if you are the one handling your accounting and you need to see, and you want to do that as a sale for a mobile payment, use the QBO app. If you have a situation where the person accepting the payment, you don't want them to have the option to create a sale. You just want them to collect payments. Use the the Go Payment app. So you have a choice of using either or, and even yourself. So I was having, an example. I was trying to accept a payment, and just for some reason, the QB app wasn't letting me do it. I didn't have the card swipe with me, so I think that might have had something to do with accepting the payment manually. But the QB app was crashing actually on me on my phone. So I went right into the Go Payment app and accepted the payment. That's just first try, and then the transaction flowed directly right into my QuickBooks. So you have the choice. So you can
Okay,
use either or
that's good to know.
to do. Yeah.
All right, thank
It
you.
just really depends on if you want to record the sale at the same time that you're recording the payment.
Great. Okay, thank you. That helps. That helps a lot. Yeah. So if you are recording the sale, like he said, with Go Payment, you can't put items in, so they would want to use the mobile app to enter that sales receipt in that situation. All right. Here's the poll results. So 35% are using QuickBooks Payments or another Intuit merchant service. Look at the variety that we have there of what our clients are using, and that creates inefficiencies for us, and that creates more work. I.e., you should be charging a higher fee. All right, so just keep that in mind. And as we go through, I'm going to go through now and show you how things work in QBO, like Dan showed in desktop. I encourage my clients to switch to the QuickBooks Merchant Services or QuickBooks Payments in QBO because it streamlines the workflow. It saves time, which ultimately saves them money. It offsets the minimal differences in the fees. So just something to think about when you're working with your clients. Is if processes take you longer, they should be charging a higher fee. So you tell your client, look, if you're going to continue to use Stripe or if you're going to use Square, your fee is going to be, $650 a month. If you switch to QuickBooks Payments, it's going to be, $550 or $500 a month because it takes us less processing time. So that's just something to analyze with you and your clients and your situation, something to think about. But I encourage a lot of mine to switch because of the integration and the time savings. But let's talk about QuickBooks Payments. You guys need to do what's right for you and your clients, and every
Right.
situation I know is different. But let's talk about QuickBooks Payments and QBO. So there's a lot of similarities between desktop and online. As Dan said, there's two different options in QBO. One with a monthly fee that has a lower rate, and the other plan has a no monthly fee, but it has a higher rate. So what you have to do is you have to look at your clients and say, how many credit card payments do they accept? How many, online payments, and what's that break-even point? Where should we pay the about $20 monthly fee to get lower rates versus where do we go with the higher ones? So if you don't have a lot of credit card activity with the higher fees, you might want to go with the free option. If they have a super lot of activity, you might want to go with the paid option. So you have to kind of look at that and help analyze the break-even point for your client on which one is right for them. But they do allow you to receive all those different credit cards, Amex, MasterCard, Visa, and Discover. So like Dan was saying, and I've got slides to show you, when you're using the QuickBooks Payments with QBO, you can email that invoice. The client has a link, and you're going to see this. I have slides in just a minute. They click the link to pay it online. They can choose to pay with a credit card or ACH debit. And now, it used to be free with the bank transfer, but now there is a low cost. I think Dan was saying it's 1%, but it's next day funding. You don't have to wait 2 or 3 or 3 to 5 days to get the money in the bank account. You can accept payments in person or over the phone. You can use a card reader. So when you sign up, a lot of times they may send you one for free. You get a card reader that you can plug into your phone so they can either insert the chip or swipe it directly on the phone so that you don't have, or the mobile device, so that you don't have to enter those transactions, all right? Now, once the payment's made, the funds are automatically put into the bank account of the small business. In QBO, the received payment transaction and the batched bank deposit transaction and any fees associated, all of that is automatically recorded in QBO. You don't have to review anything and accept and push those payments in. It's all automatically recorded for you. The received payments applied to the invoice, any fees, and the deposit, it's all automatically recorded for you in QBO. So we're going to go through and show you some of that. So this bottom one here, it allows them to get paid and records all the accounting transactions as well. So it's a huge time saver compared to Stripe and Square and these other ones. So here's how you get started. Yeah, go ahead, please.
One thing I wanted to add there, you can also accept with the newer. It's a little bit more cost for the card reader, but you can do contactless payments as well. So Apple Pay and Android Pay, you can do that as well as another option. And the break-even point is typically about $7,500 in monthly charges. So kind of keep that in mind, choosing the monthly option versus the pay-as-you-go. That's kind of like the break-even point. But you can, specify that with your client, because if they do a lot of in-person ones, then it gets a very advantageous to use the monthly fee, because that key entered one, or the swiped rate is much lower.
Okay, cool. Yes, thank you. Thank you for showing that. So some people have been asking, how do I see the different options and how do I set it up and stuff? This is how, in QuickBooks Online, this is how you're going to set up and turn on the QuickBooks Payments and check out the different options and the fees and things like that. You're going to go under the big gear. So when you're in QuickBooks Online, you go into the big gear, you click on Account Settings under Billing and Subscriptions. See where it says Payments Not Subscribed? You can go out there, click, and get in there and get the details. You also, under the Account and Settings on the Payments tab, you'll see the Payments tab. Right up here, this green box where it says Learn More. This is where you click to go out there to see the details on the options, the rates, the fees, everything, all the details that you want to know, and that's where you sign up for it. So you click on Learn More, you get in there and you see here's for this is the Pro Advisors free bank transfer. This may have changed.
Yeah.
Any and all of these slides with pricing, check the latest rates because they changed them, and I think these slides are out of date. I think it's a small fee now. It's no longer free. So these slides need to be updated. You will see, though, it's giving you the details of what's the rate when you swipe it, what if the invoices are paid online, what if it's a keyed-in rate and you type in the credit card number instead of swiping it. It gives you all of those details so you and your clients can figure that out. It also shows you the two options between the free one versus the paid one, so you can compare those as well. When you're going through to set up the payments, it has a wizard that helps walk you through. You'll see the three different options. It's got a wizard to enter the information about the bank. What's the bank account where you want payments to be deposited? What's the information about the owner and the proprietor? Who owns the business? You've got to put their information in there as well, because the credit is the credit of the owner is often used and looked at because a small business doesn't have its own credit. So they're going to go look at the owner. So if the owner has really bad credit, they may not get approved. So you want to help them make sure they've cleaned up their own credit situation, because they are looking at that when they're going in and approving this and everything. And then also the business information up here about the business, and then here's the bank information where the money needs to go. So you'll see this wizard walks you through, asking you all these details to help you apply for this QuickBooks Payments merchant service account. So you're going to go through with the business owner to fill this information out. A lot of it is pulling directly from QuickBooks Online already. So you just want to review it and make sure everything's okay. So here you'll see there's multiple addresses. You may need to choose the industry category and the type of industry. There are some specific industries that will not be approved. So there are some situations where you're not going to be able to use QuickBooks Payments, but there's not too many. I mean, a lot of times they are covered. However, with the new cannabis industry and things, I don't know what the latest laws are on that, because that's a whole can of worms where I just don't know. It used to be they would not be approved. Now some are and some aren't, so I don't know. You'll have to check into that. But you need their tax ID. And then down here, how much do you think you'll process monthly? How much online payments or credit card payments or bank transfers, how much do you think they're going to need on the monthly basis? I recommend you kind of overestimate so you don't have to up that credit limit right away. So you might estimate 25 or 50% higher than what you think, so you don't need to up that limit right away. Then you click next. You're going to fill out the information. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, one thing about that is that, there's and the reason that they have to check the customer's, the primary principal's credit is because of the risk that's involved. And a lot of people don't necessarily realize that there is the way the funds are actually transmitted, they're transmitted from the customer's bank account or customer's credit card account at the same time they're trying to make the deposit. And if something happens in that, then Intuit has already fronted them the money, but they haven't received it from the collecting bank. So now it comes up to the risk sort of thing. But with that, and getting a higher one, if they see any anomalies, like if normally your charges are $100, $200, and then all of a sudden there is a $1,000, $2,000 card charge, those things get held get held up in the funding because of that. They want to make sure that it's a legitimate charge. Anti-money laundering, if anything smells like money laundering, they'll hold it up. And unfortunately, it's for a good reason, because if it quacks like a duck, it may be. So as it's a nuisance, hey, I just got paid, it's legitimate. They just need to kind of prove that, and then they'll release the funds.
Yeah, and one thing I might add there is Intuit's processes. I mean, Intuit follows the guidelines in the industry standards. So Intuit is like Visa and MasterCard and all these other credit card processing. So when you're using Stripe or Square or whatever, all of these merchant services have some of the similar guidelines and things like that. Intuit is not unique in that. That's kind of norm in the industry to help prevent different fraud and theft and things like that. So those are good points, Dan. Thank you for pointing that out. Another point.
Thing with like Square and PayPal, they are not traditional merchant accounts in a merchant account sense. They're what's called payment aggregators. So they're kind of dovetailing off of other people's merchant accounts to be able to collect payments in this case. So, as things may be a little bit more simpler with those types of things, there might be higher fees, or, just all these things kind of go into, how collecting payments. And, it's, some might be ease of use, but they're collecting higher fees because of that, and they're not a traditional merchant account in that sense. But QuickBooks Payments is a traditional merchant account.
Yes, thank you. And when you're applying, you have to enter information about the owner. So notice down here at the bottom, you have to put the owner's date of birth and the last 4 digits of their SSN. So keep that in mind, that you do need your owner information. And in a minute, we have a tip. I recommend you and the owner go through remotely and you do this together, because you don't want to do this on your own for the client, and that's a tip you're going to see in just a minute. Then you enter the bank account information when the money comes in, which bank account, your company bank account, where does it going, what's that bank account information. So you need the routing number and the account number, of course. And then here's the tip. When you're doing it, the accountant should not be the primary owner. You're not filling this out. This is the client's merchant service account, and it's a legal document and a legal agreement. We should not accept this. The client does. So you don't go through and set up merchant service accounts on your own and apply for them and all this. You must do this with the client and let the client be the one that clicks, apply for merchant service account, because it's theirs and it's a legal thing. So you want to protect yourself. So this is where you definitely will want to log in remotely with your client or be there on site with your client to help them to do this. All right. So just keep that in mind as a caution. If your client was using QuickBooks Desktop or any of these Intuit merchant service solutions, you're going to need to convert that from what they were doing and connect it to the QuickBooks Online company. Call merchant services, and there's the phone number, and they can help you to do that. All right, so if they were using desktop in any of these merchant service accounts, and you need to now connect it to a QBO company, call in to that number, and they will help you to make that connection there, so you don't have to apply for a new one. Now, let's talk about the online invoicing that Dan talked about and getting paid online, because clients, especially with QuickBooks Online, can use the online invoicing without doing the online payments. So you choose your customer, you enter the invoice, and you click Save. And I got screenshots to show you in a second, so I'm going through this slide quickly. You enter the invoice, and you click Save and Send to email that directly to the client. The customer opens that email, and that also will record the date and time that they looked at that. when they look at that invoice, and then they can click the button to pay it online. Also, with the online invoicing, let's say the client or the customer has a question. Hey, Dan, you said this was going to be $200 and you invoiced me $250. What was the difference? Dan can reply, well, remember, you wanted to do this and that was $50 more. Oh, yeah. All that online messaging can be contained right there with the history of that invoice. I'll show you that in a second. And then, of course, if you're using the QuickBooks Payments, they can click to pay it online. So that's step number 4. So let's look at the slides for this, and I'm going to go through it kind of quickly because it's kind of self-explanatory, and Dan covered a lot of the process. You create your invoice, and up here, unlike with QuickBooks Desktop, I can't set a global preference that says I always want to do the bank transfer and not credit cards. It's on each individual invoice. You have to uncheck credit cards if you want to do that. At this time, keep sending in feedback to Intuit. I'm hoping we can set that as a global preference or customer by customer preference, but right now in QBO it's not there. So you indicate how you want to let them pay on the invoice. You click Save and Send. This is the email that the customer will get. Do not attach that invoice as a PDF because you want them to click Review and Pay. And I'll show you when they click this Review and Pay, they can click to save it as a PDF or to print it if they want to. But you want them to click Review and Pay so it records the date and time that they looked at the invoice. That way you know they got the email and they looked at it. So, and this is where the client or the customer enters how much they want to pay. They can choose if they want to pay with a debit card, bank transfer, or credit card. They put the information in. They indicate if they want to save that payment for future. So you can accept the online bank payments and it can save it for future. That means also you can set up recurring payments, recurring sales receipts for either bank transfers or credit card payments. So that's one of the differences between desktop and online, is that you can do that for bank transfers too. Here's the view of the invoice the client will get, and again, they can save it to PDF or they can print that if they need to. In QuickBooks Online, I love this. When you go into the Sales Center, you can see the status. So you'll see a list of all these different invoices, and you can see the status of the invoices that were sent, how many, has it been viewed yet? Has it been paid? And has it been deposited yet? So I love this convenient kind of flow chart to see where they are and what's outstanding. You can look at it at a glance to see some of that. Then on the invoice itself, on the bottom of that invoice, if you scroll down to the bottom down there, this is where you're going to see all the history of that invoice, the date and time that you sent it, the date and time that they viewed it, did you change it, did they send you a message about it, did they pay it, all the details, date and time, and all those details are going to be recorded right here with that invoice. So I love that because you don't have to go look for messages out in your email. It's all right here in that invoice within QuickBooks. So it's all in one location. So this, again, is when they're using QuickBooks Payments. So you can do the online e-invoicing without QuickBooks Payments. But when they are using payments, you're going to have to remember, up here's where you change how you want to let them pay when you're sending that invoice. Okay, so remember, that's right up there. This is a customer entering their credit card information on a sales receipt. So if you're making it recurring, so let's say you do monthly services for your clients. Every month it's $1,000 a month. You want to charge them on the 5th day of the month, let's say. You would set up a recurring sales receipt. And on that sales receipt, right here under the payment method, you would enter like MasterCard or Visa. You would enter the payment information or the bank account information. Obviously, there's a form that your client has to sign to authorize those automatic payments. And then once you enter that information, it will automatically hit that bank account or that credit card every period, whatever you set that sales receipt up, whether it's weekly or monthly or whatever frame, a time frame, it's going to go ahead and process that sales receipt automatically for you. That is a huge time saver. So I just love that. And then those recurring payments, this is showing you how to set the recurring payment. Up under the big gear, under recurring transactions, up here, have it automatically send the emails. So it will automatically record the sales receipt, record the payment, any fees associated, the deposit, and send that email to your client. You have to do nothing. You just automated that whole workflow. I absolutely love that. And in another situation, let's say you have a client that doesn't want to do recurring sales receipts. Maybe it's a landlord and they have 50 different tenants. and they want the tenant to choose when they make the payment so it doesn't hit their bank account before their paycheck gets in there or something. They may make the recurring invoice. Let the tenants click to enter the online payment themselves when they want to make that payment. Then again, with QuickBooks Online, the payment received, the fees, the deposit are all automatically created and posted into QuickBooks. So again, you've automated the entire workflow. You're not doing anything. You can't do that with Stripe and Square and some of these other things. And that's where I think it's such a huge time saver, especially with QuickBooks Online, that I really talk to clients about changing. It's a lot of times beneficial, especially if you're trying to match things from third-party processors in different batches and different groups, and you might have to have a clearing account to run it through. How much time do you waste per month trying to get that to all reconcile? It just drives people crazy and waste time. So I really like having it fully integrated like that. I can't emphasize that enough. So, Dan, do you want to add any comments on some of that? I see some questions in here. And
Yeah.
maybe here, Dan, this is actually a good question for you. How do things work and what do they do? Somebody says, I had an issue where my client had a payment rejected because they entered something wrong and no notification is given. Do you know how that works and what they're doing? Is Intuit working on a way to send a notification?
I'll have to reach out to some of my friends that are still there and find out the inside scoop on that. But yeah, you get the notification as the payment processor, but as what I'm gathering from the question is the customer didn't get that, so they don't know.
Right.
And that may be, there may be a rule that they're following, and just kind of keep that in mind, that there may be a payment card industry rule, with that. But I'll have to double check and kind of circle back on that one. And one other thing that I wanted to talk about, when you mentioned it, as a pro advisor, you get them lower fees. Another option or an opportunity. Not only the time savings that you're going to have when you have a client using, QB Payments, but if you join up with the QSP program or join a partner program that's built in with the QSP, you could start making.
That's the QuickBooks Solution Provider.
Right, the QuickBooks Solution Provider. Sorry about that. I threw out the acronym like everybody knew what I was talking about. You can start earning some residuals off of these services like payments, and not only are you saving them money, you're saving them on the fees. You're saving them lower monthly fees because you're spending less time, but also you can be earning a little bit more off of that as well. So reach out. If you're going to QB Connect, you'll find lots of partners, or talk to the Intuit booth about the QSP program if that's something that you that interests you.
Cool. So that's great. Thank you, Dan. And then and this is great. So, and I love Brent's comment here. Brent, thank you for sharing this. My fee is higher by a good bit if they, meaning our clients, do not use QB Payments. This is an additional incentive for them to choose the right solution. Exactly. If the clients are doing things that cause you to be inefficient, and one of the sessions, or the session I'm doing at QB Connect, is called automating the processes for the client's workflow and you at the firm, and how to automate these processes to streamline our workflow. If the client insists on doing things that makes you inefficient and outside of your processes, they can and should be paying a higher fee. And so it's their choice. Either pay more and go ahead and continue doing what you're doing, or switch so that you fit into our streamlined processes and save time and save money. So that's something that I hope you guys can be working on, and that's part of pricing, which is not our topic today. So I don't want to get into that.
Oh look, weeds.
Yes, exactly. So here's a good question that Joe had. Can you take credit cards for Europe or India? If it's a Visa or a MasterCard, does it matter the location that card was issued? Dan, I don't know.
I know JCB, which is a Japanese bank, was a payment option at one point. But yeah, those international cards, as long as they're, that's a good question. Definitely you want to reach out.
I know when we travel, I use my U.S. issued Visa. Over in Europe, I have the international exchange fees, or I have a card that gives me free exchange fees. My Visa is accepted worldwide. So I
Yeah.
kind of think that if it's a credit card, if it's a normal Visa and MasterCard, I think that yes, it might work,
Yeah.
but I'm not positive. That would be a great question for Intuit.
Yeah.
Because
Definitely
I
reach
know
out.
I use mine when we travel internationally, and I don't have any issues whatsoever.
And
So
somebody asked, how do you get the device, the card swipe? If you go, those are best ordered in your merchant center, and that's another thing that we didn't even talk about too much was the going into the merchant center. It's merchantcenter.intuit.com, and once you're signed in there, you can do a lot of things and run reports, which is very helpful for you as a bookkeeper and accountant when things don't happen automatically, to realize what was part of the batch and those types of things. But going in there, you can order the card swipe. You can either get the $19 one, which is just the Bluetooth, or the larger one that can accept the contactless pay as well. I think that's $49.
And Dan, I have a question for you. So I've seen this question a couple of times. Somebody said, hey, somebody's got a link for PayPal on their website so somebody can pay there. Somebody else says, can QB payments be used on our website? So I know when you go to save an invoice, you can
Hmm.
get a link for that invoice. Is there a generic link that you could put on your website? I'm not sure
Yeah.
about that.
That's one thing that is constantly asked. You used to be able to do that with the Intuit Payment Network back in those days, but no is the short answer. Now, no, but you if you're using an approved e-commerce shopping cart like Shopify or GoDaddy, you can connect your QuickBooks Payments account um, with those accounts, with those options. So yes and no. But if you want to have just make a payment on your website, no. But if you want to have a checkout process that's connected to your QuickBooks payment, perhaps is the answer.
Right. Well, and that makes sense because you want the payment applied to the invoice. So there has to be some way for, they have to somehow sign in, like with a shopping cart or something.
Hmm.
But they click the link in their email, and it takes them directly in to pay it. So,
Right.
yeah.
QuickBooks Bill and Pay, I think is an app that allows you to do that sort of thing. Um, so you can connect your third party, or you can connect your QuickBooks account to the QuickBooks Bill and Pay, and then that allows you to do a little bit more robustness. So you could put like a payment link on your website.
Cool. Now here's another one for you, Dan. Can
Mhm.
payments received in QB Desktop automatically be classed to location? You don't have locations in desktop, so I'm going to assume you're using classes in
Yeah.
desktop. So can you automatically class it if we use multiple POS classes, not locations?
Yeah. So you can't classify a payment
The
in
invoice is
desktop,
classified,
but the invoice
right?
is going to be classified, right? So if you're doing like a recurring transaction, no. But if you've created the transaction already in your QuickBooks and you're just then connecting that payment to your invoice, you would have already done that. But the payment itself is not going to be able to be classified.
Okay, very good. And so here's a question about the e-invoicing in desktop and if you can set it up as a recurring transaction. So one of the differences between desktop and online. In desktop, it's called a memorized transaction. So let's say you have that landlord, you set up 50 invoices as memorized transactions in desktop, and you tell it to automatically enter them on the 5th day of the month or the 1st day of the month or whatever day.
Mhm.
With desktop, you actually have to open that file before it will create those invoices. And Dan, can you tell it to send them automatically like you can with QBO?
In the recurring
In a
to
recurring
email,
invoice in desktop, can it automatically email?
it should, but I'd
I
have to
think
double
so.
check for you.
Yeah. So with desktop, you have to log into desktop before it creates those invoices. So if nobody logs in, and it's supposed to happen on the 1st of the month, it doesn't
Mhm.
happen until somebody opens that desktop file and then they'll create them. With QuickBooks Online, you can be on a beach with a little umbrella drink enjoying your vacation, and when that date comes around, it will automatically create the invoice or the sales receipt, email it if you've told it to, and process the payments if you told it to on the sales receipt. So there's more automation with QBO than there is with QB desktops when it comes to recurring transactions there.
Right. Now it'll record the payment, if in desktop if they've created it as a recurring payment. And one thing I don't know if I mentioned, the recurring payments in desktop is credit card only, not ACH. So big difference there between QBO
yes,
and
you mentioned
desktop.
it, I mentioned it, you mentioned it again, so hopefully.
My short-term memory is kicking in. Who are you? How did you get here? Where am I?
Funny. Yeah. Well, and the good news here is hopefully this helped you guys to learn more about QuickBooks Payments. I know a lot of you didn't know much about them yet. We had over 90% that did learn something new, so that's always great. If you have additional questions, particularly very specific questions, contact Intuit because they're there to help you. And again, you can go in and click Learn More to see all those different rates out there. But the biggest thing is start using it yourself with your clients. When I started using it and letting the clients pay online and stuff, I had several clients that said, that's really cool. How can I do that for my clients or my customers? And then I helped them set that up, and then you get other work from them, and pretty soon they become a great client for you. So use it yourself, help your clients implement it, help your clients get switched from other merchant service accounts into QuickBooks Payments. You will appreciate it, and your clients will as well. Dan and I both appreciate you guys for being here. We did go over some because you all had a lot of great questions, and we still had several hundred people on here. Dan, anything else that you want to add?
Yeah, I wish I did, but I mean, I could talk about payments all day, because I'm really getting into the online, e-commerce and that sort of stuff. So this is really getting into my niche of things that I really like to do. And if you can have everything in the Intuit ecosystem, it's the integration is where it really heads or tails, stands above other payment processors. But again, if it's not the right fit, then it's not the right fit. If a lot of them will have specific needs that they need for their payments, like a payment link on their website. Again, there are options, but you don't want to make the round, the square peg fit in the round hole if that's the case. Find what works for them best, and then charge accordingly.
Exactly. Yes. And that's the thing, we are in charge of our business. You don't go into your dentist and tell the dentist how they're going to, what tools they're going to use and how they're going to do things, or you don't go into the hair salon and tell them what they're going to use. They choose the tools that they use, and we do the same thing. So we need to try to get the clients to use the right tools for the right jobs to streamline the workflow and everything. So great points, Dan. We can continue the discussion out in the Facebook group, so join us out there. We'd love to have you. Just search Facebook group, search for QB Power Hour, and join us out on Facebook. Dan, thank you so much, and thank you everybody for joining us, and we will see you back for Automate. Remember, we have Automate coming. We're going to talk about batch entering transactions, and this is another area of huge time savings for you when you're working with your clients. And value pricing really comes into play. So we'd love to have you join us for Automate on September 19th. Check us out at the QB training events, and don't forget to check out QB Connect as well. So thanks, everybody. Thanks, Dan. Thanks for joining us.
My
See you
pleasure.
in the Facebook group.
Have a great day.
Bye, everyone.